Greetings, good people. Welcome to Who Knows It's Just Life, the podcast. I'm your host, Kyle, along with Cierra Lewis, yet again for another episode. Welcome back.
Hello. We're a dream team.
I'm with it. Dream
like
team.
Kobe and Shaq.
There you go. Or how about we shooting like Steph Curry and Sabrina Ionescu?
I love it. Okay, because we're going to be talking about them.
Yeah.
That was really good. I wasn't even thinking that, but you see?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, yeah, here we are again for another episode of Who Knows It's Just Like, the podcast. We appreciate you for fitting us into the day. Today's episode is going to be called But Words Will Never Hurt Me. And this is a heavy one. I don't know about heavy, but
it's impactful. It packs a punch.
It does. Because we're going to break down that phrase, that saying that everybody's heard before, sticks and stones can break my bones.
But words will never hurt me. Which is a lie, but we'll get into that.
Right. Like, it's like we say that and we kind of just absorb that as kids, but yeah, it's really not true. And we know that. Like, we know this.
Facts.
But before we go there, like, let's just get into some updates and some news stuff. So first thing, I know one thing I saw and I sent to Sierra was Angel Reese and her boo. And,
yes.
You know, your response was...
I was like, oh my gosh, yes, Black love. Like, she's living her best life. She's like top of her game. And like, you know, she got this man and like, he seemed to treat her right. And listen, she is flourishing. So I'm like, yes, Black love. I am here for it.
I was like that too, but one of the posts, they had I don't know if it was a full 10, but it was a number of pictures on Instagram, and one of them, and she had her hand around his neck,
right,
and a couple of them like that, and I was like, ooh,
right.
Yes, I was like, you know, so a lot of time, like I just love that image for multiple reasons. One, first of all, I mean, everybody wrongfully assumes that every woman basketball player is gay, which is not. It's just it's a stereotype. It's a terrible assumption to make. Obviously, many are, but many are not, and it's just like we shouldn't even be caring, honestly.
Right.
But I also just love that, like with her hand on his neck like that, like it just shows the power dynamic and an energy flow. You know, I think like in the boring sense of like sexual dynamics, we think of like men being more dominant and women being more submissive, and that image just conveys like a little bit of a balance or a back and forth of like just an exchange of those types of roles. And I just love seeing her like in like expressing that and him like loving it, because like men that love it, you know what I'm saying, like and I don't know that that's like out there as much, so I'm just glad that picture is out there, just to kind of just continue to challenge the boring stereotypical norms of sexual dynamics and all of that. So
okay, so not even just sexual dynamics, but even how women are posed in ad campaigns, photo shoots, and so like they're always, like you said, like posed in very submissive poses, right? Like they're like leaning or kind of off kilter, and then when you add a man in the mix, it's like she's like a woman is directly positioned like slightly beside him, but it's never one of position of power, you know? So I love it. Like, so I don't know if it was like for a photo shoot or if it was just for them like keying, but when I look at it from that lens, I'm just like, yes, queen, like we're here for it.
Oh yeah, and when you said that, it reminded me of the photo shoot. It was like a magazine cover with Rihanna and A$AP Rocky in the background, and people were going
people
on.
Lost their minds.
I was like, really? How is this that hard to? But the fact that sorry, I kind of jumped into it. But for those who may not be aware, do you know what magazine it was? I can't remember what.
I think it was Vogue.
Vogue had a cover, and it was Rihanna prominently in the front and center of the image, and A$AP Rocky was in the background with the kids. I'm sorry, the kids. She didn't have the second one yet. So yeah, it was just the son. I think he was holding them in his arms, I believe. And I think his head was down. Like it wasn't about his face or nothing like that. It was like he was very much like a supporting. Yeah, he was like an extra kind of.
And the thing was, to be honest, it wasn't about them as a family, but about her as a woman.
Right.
And like this new role that she's in as a mother, not just as a mother, but as a mogul, a billionaire. And so I think people really got in their feelings. Now I can see if it's like, hey, it's a whole family shoot, like it's all about all of us, but it was about her. And I don't think and my thing is A$AP Rocky didn't have a problem with it.
Yeah, and nor should he. Like if I'm a healthy partner to my partner, like, and she got a big thing going on, like I'm a play my part to support her the same way she'll play her part to support me when it's my turn to shine, her time to shine, or our time to shine together. Like,
yes.
you know, wasn't that a lyric of her song?
Yes, that's how I'm like, did you do that on purpose?
I did not do that on purpose.
Okay, I'm like, come on, Umbrella.
That was
okay.
Definitely did not intend that, but that's really funny that happened. But I think the vitriol reaction to that image proves the point that you're making about journalism and how women are portrayed in images, and this Angel Reese post, like you said, it's looked very casual, it looked very like spur of the moment, but regardless, like more imagery like that is good for us, I think, as a people, just to give us, you know, and I don't mean just black people, just people in general, to
culture.
give us, just culture, to give us
like
that
pop
full,
culture,
right? Just that full range of like of power dynamics, of leadership, of you know, all that. All
the things.
Definitely. So one thing we were talking about before the show, we were thinking about mentioning this, and I mentioned it as me and Steph and Sabrina here.
Okay.
But Sabrina Iescu like just lit up the 3-point competition in the WNBA All-Star game Saturday, and like it was like 37 points or something like that. Like she missed like one ball, and it was funny because it took the announcers like a couple of times to recognize, like, wait a minute, she hasn't missed. Like,
the whole thing, like, she doesn't miss. I was like, gang, let's go.
Yeah, nah, that was pretty crazy. And then Steph responded. He was like, yeah, and like I was curious if there'd be any kind of like, you know, drama with it, but it doesn't sound like there was any. I mean, that was just straight up skills competition. She just beasted it out.
True. So. And I think, and like, I wish I would see more buzz about this, because I'm like, again, I don't think people realize like the magnitude of what she did. And it's like, we always talk about, and I mean, I know Steph is about to drop this new documentary, I think, out on like Apple.
Yeah. And Toby and Wingway's affiliate. No, was it Toby? Yeah, I think Toby. I saw it on Toby and Wingway's Instagram. Toby.
He is doing something for
Toby's
them.
Producing it, I think.
Yeah. And I'm just like, yo, like Steph is great. I'm not, and again, we love a good underdog story. But if we want to talk about underdogs, I feel like being a woman professional basketball player, underdog. Yeah. Right? And so like homegirl literally 37 points. That's nuts. Missed one.
Yeah.
And I think she beat his record. And so like, and when he said,
did,
like,
she did. So,
yeah. And I think he was being very like tongue in cheek, you know, like, so there is no beef, but I would love to see them like go like shot for shot.
Yeah, no,
like,
that would be dope.
Like, dope. Let's go.
Yeah, that would be fire. And I think you were the one. I'm a little disappointed in myself because you told me about it.
Yeah.
And I think you said your sister follows WNBA. I played fantasy WNBA. So really? I do follow the leagues, but I'm a homer. Like most of my players on my team are on the Mystics. So and I know New York's got the super teams with Sabrina and others, and the Aces are also a super team as well. And they're I think they've only lost a few games this season so far, maybe 4. But I follow, but I'm following like my fantasy team, which is mostly the Mystics. Okay. Because I'm a homer, right?
Okay.
So I wasn't even and I was just in the mix of all these other things. I didn't even see the I was actually out of town when that happened, so I didn't even catch that. But so I'm disappointed in myself as somebody who's a sports fan who is attempting to, you know, and get more into women's sports, especially the professional ranks. I do follow women's tennis, but basketball too. I didn't know about it, and I was like, damn, I need to step it up continuously.
Because I was just like, listen, because everyone always talk about like Steph's the GOAT, the 3-point GOAT, but I'm like, baby,
yeah.
Allow me to introduce you to Sabrina Ionescu. I think that's how you say her name, y'all.
Yeah, Ionescu. Yeah.
But she did that, and I loved her response to the the post like interview where they were like how did you focus and like how did you try not to miss or something like that, and she was like, oh, I just practiced on it, and like, you know, I didn't focus on that, I was just trying to one shot at a time, and I know I didn't miss many. I was like, say that with confidence, because right. I love when, and I saw this thing on Twitter, it was like women responding to compliments in the affirmative, where it's like, oh, you're beautiful, thank you, I know.
Right. Yeah, so, I did that.
Right. So when that lady was like, you know, you didn't miss it, or like, you know, how did you focus on not missing? And she's like, I know I wouldn't miss many. Yeah. I was like, talk your stuff, honey.
Yeah.
Talk your stuff, as you should, because men do it all the time. And I just feel like sometimes Issa Rae is good for that, where she was like, even her like speech, she did like an acceptance speech where she was being very like tongue in cheek, where she's like, it's about me. It's all about me. I did that. It's about me. And I know she's joking, but I think there's some.
She's also making.
Yes, I'm like, women, like own your shit. Like all, and like someone told me that recently, and I was talking to a friend who works like in Washington in politics, and she was saying, working out here is very cutthroat, and so it's like if you don't like talk about what you did and lay claim to the work that you've done, somebody will take credit for your work.
True.
And I was like, oh. And so she was like, as women, we need to be more comfortable where it's like taking ownership, and not trying to be so humble about the things that, now I'm not saying like be braggadocious, but like set the record straight. Like I did this, this, and this. So period.
That's facts. So yeah, there's that, and then there was one other thing you wanted to pose before we get into it. It's kind of like an appetizer,
right? Like so. Okay, so a couple weeks ago, like the whole Chica situation on the plane, and I know like we talked about it, and you weren't aware, so like
I didn't know. Yeah.
So okay, I'll
educate me and the peoples who might not be hip.
All right, so Chica is a rapper, singer, performer. She's made headlines before due to some of her mental health issues, and some of the things she's posted before. So homegirl was catching a red eye, and I get it, like flying or being anywhere with children, small children can be annoying, right? Like other people's kids can be annoying. So she's on a plane, red eye, and like she is venting about how there are screaming children in the flight. Now, Chica has a very like off sense of humor, if you will. Me personally, and I'll get into like what she said. Personally, I don't think it was appropriate, but we'll get into the question I want to pose. So she's basically going off on Twitter, and she's talking about how like, and some of the things she said was like, you know, I gotta deal with these like whiny ass like crybabies, like who the F bring their kids on like a red eye, like take your ass, like handle that shit in economy, because now I have to deal with
she was in first class, right?
Right. And she was like, now I have to deal with the effects of your promiscuity, and these bastards are like raging. And social media lit her ass up, and like plot twist, it turned out the children who she was like complaining about were like the grandchildren of like rapper T.I. and his wife Tiny. And so I feel like we all have things that annoy us or inconvenience us, and sometimes we need to like purge it out. Me, I will call my best friend and call my sister, like, and we can say like inappropriate things as such, and there's no judgment. It's like, okay, I just got to get this out. But I wouldn't take it to Twitter.
Yeah. And
the question I want to pose is like, how do you vent like your like inside, like how and when should you vent the inside voices, like your inside thoughts? Because like I know, like for example, like I know like there was an instance at my job where a white woman wanted to touch my hair, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm like, no, this bitch didn't, and I can't say that on the job. I called my best friend. I'm like, this mayonnaise marauder. You know, and it's like venting and saying things like that to my best friend it's a safe space. You know, I don't think I could go on. I mean, on the internet, maybe I could, but the internet. The internet is not a safe space. It is not a safe place. Open your notes app. Call a friend. Like, you know, I don't think it's okay, and I feel like words. The internet, even text messaging, is very ambiguous, and there's so much room for misinterpretation, and that's the thing. Like sometimes there's no context. Like people jumping on Chica was like, how dare she say something like this? I'm like, she has said outlandish things before, not to this extent, but like in that shock humor kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I feel, and again, I'm not excusing it because I feel like you shouldn't. Me personally, I don't think you should talk about people's kids like that. I mean, or at least not in a public setting like that. Right. Like I'll go to like the grocery store and I'll text my friend. I'm like, girl, daily dose of birth control. This child is like having a fit.
You said daily dose of birth control.
No, for real, because sometimes they'd be like, ooh, all right, like you know.
Wow, that's beautiful.
I'm just like, all right, I'm good.
That's hilarious.
My ovaries are like on pause right now. Like, seeing little Timmy throw a tantrum at Target I'm good.
Oh, not the alliteration. You are killing me. Timmy throw the tantrum at Target. You are on one today.
Okay.
Yo, that's hilarious. Yo, but that's true. And I don't have any answer. I don't have an answer different from what you said. I mean, I would say to say it in a safe space, and the internet is not safe.
It's not.
like whatever happened to like opening a journal and writing down into a journal. Like, and I'm saying this, I don't do it myself, but like I did get one for my kid because I, trying to instill that in him. But but I will pull out the notes app on my phone and jot some things down. Like I'll do that.
Like for real, and okay, this is different, but I feel like sometimes people go to the internet and they think it's their diary,
yeah.
and it's like again, the internet is not safe.
Yeah,
it's not safe.
It is not. It is not. And that's like a good, especially Twitter, because Twitter is words, and you mentioned how text can be misconstrued.
Yeah.
And Twitter is literally like a text message to the world, right? And so, whereas Instagram, YouTube, TikTok can be more video, more animated a little bit. So there's a little bit more.
There's context to that.
Context, a little bit more of the communicative expressions are given, but. Yeah, like, and I mean, that kind of gets to the whole premise of the episode of words will never hurt. Like, so clearly, as we've seen, words do matter.
They do.
And so, like, point one in this episode is just to dispel and throw out that whole saying of sticks and stones will break my bones, words will never hurt me, because they absolutely do. And we all know that.
Yes.
Right? I mean, like, there's everybody has either said or heard the phrase "word is bond."
Yeah.
Like everybody. So how can we say both at the same time? Like, you know what I mean?
And it cooks my grits when I hear people say words will never hurt, because words are so powerful. Like, and it's like I you hear people complain where it's like bullying is very real. And like, even like in this day and age where it's like, they're like, these kids are soft. I'm like, it's not like someone like pushed you and like, stole your lunchbox, but that could be a traumatic thing too. But a lot of the bullying, it's cyber, it's virtual. It's like saying mean things. Mm-hmm. And these kids, they're sponges. They're absorbing these things. So it's not even like that they have a clear sense of identity yet. Right?
Right.
And it's like they're looking to define themselves throughout the world that they're in.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like when they're like, but words will never hurt. They do.
Yeah.
They cut deep.
Yeah.
And I every time people, I wish, if I were to ever hear an adult say that to a child today, I think I would punch them in the esophagus.
And hopefully that would hurt.
Yes. I'm like, well, I didn't punch you. I mean, I didn't. I was like, if I give you a warning and I say I'm going to punch you in the esophagus, does it cushion the blow?
Maybe.
Yeah. Like it just irks me because these kids deserve better, and I wish, and I hate when people say or even our generation of millennials, y'all are just soft. No, we have time to process. And I mean, I get it. Other generations haven't, so that's why they're just like, words will never hurt. It hurt you. You just pretend that it did, that it didn't.
Yeah.
You grew callous to it.
Right. Or had some kind of habit that you picked up to mitigate it in some healthy or unhealthy way. So yeah, that's real. And then I always think of the Lao Tzu quote that I've heard reiterated multiple times. I know I think the first time I heard it was Dr. Freeman Rabowski spoke when I was in high school, and he ended a speech with it, which is watch your thoughts, they become your words. Watch your words, they become your actions. Watch your actions, they become your habits. Watch your habits, they become your character. Watch your character, it becomes your destiny. And so words are very much a critical point in that whole trajectory of from thoughts to destiny. So and I think any self-help book ever we'll talk about manifestation and your thoughts and the folks you surround yourself with and just the words that you use. And so myth is hereby dispelled.
Yes.
You've heard it here. That is some BS. And so we're going to do a little bit of a nerdy deep dive on some of some other evidence and other examples. This is definitely not exhaustive, but just some other examples of where we can look to realize that this is not an accurate thing to say. So, I guess on the face value, is words are a transference of energy, right?
Yeah.
So when we talk, like words are meant to convey some kind of cognitive understanding, and like you could say something like it's so basic, but I feel like we need to say, like, if you say something positive or negative, like that energy literally is translated. Like you could watch, you could listen to a sad song, and granted that's also like you're also hearing the musicality too, but that energy is being transferred. Okay, fine, like even like a spoken word poem, like there's no music, right? The words hit you. Like that evidence number one. Spoken word, right?
Dead ass. And same thing with music. Like those words, you're feeling something, you're connecting to it. You know, like, listen, I'm like post breakup, so it's like I can't listen to Jasmine Sullivan's Lost Ones or like any Adele song at the moment.
Right.
Because I'm just like, this is not a sad girl summer. Okay.
Right.
So it's just like, no, because like soon as I hear Jasmine Sullivan just sing, you know when you're lost one, I'ma just cry because I'm like, Jasmine,
stop it,
okay.
Stop it, we're not ready.
All the feels.
Yeah, nah, that's true. So yeah, there's a piece of evidence right there. So and then there's a lot of spiritual references too. I know you had a few biblical references. Around that,
right. Because like I think like music is spiritual, words are spiritual, right? Because even from like a faith based, like Christian faith, right? Like it literally talks about like, what does it say? Like the word was with God, the word was God, right? And like in the beginning, like, there was the word was God, the word was with God. And so like, and even throughout the Bible, you just hear like there's many scripture where it talks about being careful about what you say. And like how you say it, and like, and just even if you want to talk about like manifestation, miracles, right? One of my favorite miracles in the Bible, there is a dude who comes up to Jesus and he's like, "Hey, bro, listen, like I'm not even worthy for you to step foot in my house, but if you send word to heal my homie, I believe he'll be healed." And Jesus goes, "My guy, you got great faith. It's done." And the guy is healed. He sent word. You know what I'm saying? Even where like it talks about like God created like the whole earth. He spoke life into things. And it's just, and again, even, and I think it's important to talk about too, like accepting and receiving words.
Yeah.
Right? Where like people say like, you'll never do that. Don't receive that.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like don't internalize that. Like as far as you're concerned, as far as it concerns you, that is a lie. That is not true. And you don't have to accept it. I think what does like a lot of people disservice, and I don't want to say it's their fault. I just don't think it's taught, where it's like people will say things and speak things to us and over us, and we hold on to it and we internalize it, where it's like, they said I'll never amount to nothing, so I'm not even going to try.
Yeah.
Because they already set this expectation for me. What's the point? But it's like, what do you say about you?
Right.
And the power of like affirmations, like in the morning, it's so key. Like I feel like if I don't do my affirmations and my prayers, I'm off. Like I can't even show up fully and be my best self, because I just feel, it's like walking out the house with no pants on. Like you feel like you feel off.
Yeah.
And it's like, you have to tell the truth about you, even if you don't see it yet, right? Or just, you have to speak things that are, even if they aren't. Like when you hear people talk about like, oh, like one of my favorite examples, Mike Todd, where he, like when they were like Transformation Church, like in the cut, when like people were like leaving the church left and right before they blew up. He was coming in every morning, didn't have any staff, had like one assistant, and he would just like walk around the office like, "Hi everybody, just one person in there." And he was like, just watch, like it's gonna be people here. And so I think people really have to kind of get out of agreement with negative things spoken over to them, and then reaffirm positive things.
That reminds me, I think it's a quote from Confucius: "He who says he can and he who says he can't are both right."
Yes.
And it's just like, oh shit.
Is that where Eleanor Roosevelt got? Because like she has something very similar. It's
really?
Like whether you can or you can't, it's true.
Up to you. Oh, it's true, right? Yeah.
And I'm like, girl, okay.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, and I love how it has how there's a lot of like biblical references to it, like and I remember I've been a fan of reggae music for a long time. Like my uncle got me into reggae probably when I was like, I don't know, 10, 12, something like that. And one thing I picked up on was the language that they use. So and a lot of times with the language, they'll change certain elements of the word based on how it sounds. So when we think of white supremacy, we would call that we normally call that colloquially, we say like that's an oppressor. But up is up.
Yeah.
So a Rasta would say down pressure.
I like that.
Right? Because it's down.
And it's kind of literal.
Sense. Right.
Like, and I like that because like that's what it is. Like, there's nothing upward about this.
Right,
like,
right.
Like
it's the up pushing down.
Yes.
Right.
I like that.
Yeah, and so there's a whole bunch of different examples like that where they'll just like flip, a certain key syllable or whatever. And even like I and I, instead of saying me sounds like mean, but like I is I, and like they'll say I and I instead of me. And not everybody does it the same way all the time, but like there's just a lot of different examples of just like being aware and conscious of just like the sounds that we're saying. I'm trying to think of another example, but yeah, the point is made. Like
yeah,
like they're intentional with the words that they use and even just the energy that it is transferring.
That word intentional, that's key. Like I think that's like they're very intentional, and I think they take it very seriously, right? Because I think the thing like the Rastafarians really kind of like embrace is just like music is spiritual, and so there's like an intentionality behind it to call things what they are. Yeah,
definitely. And then the other examples we had here that we talked about was I know we both have heard about the study with the plants where like if you speak positively towards plants, they'll flourish more so than if you do nothing, or if you speak harsh words towards a plant. Obviously they don't have ears the way we think of ears and hearing, but somehow
they pick up on it.
Yeah.
And it's like I love that like meme where it's like we're all basically just house plants that need like, what is it? We're all just house plants that have emotions.
I like that.
And so like I'm just like, yeah. So it's like, I'm not a plant. I mean, I'm kind of a plant mom. I have a plant. It's new. So like, but I talk to it and I'm like, hi sunshine. And it's just like, I put it by like my windowsill. And it's like, and I know it sounds very like goofy, but it's like, I talk to my little plant.
Yeah, that's good. And it appreciates that.
Right? Listen, I really do. I just be like walking in and be like, all right, bye my little plant. Hi, my little plant. You know?
So another really interesting example about words having power, and this is kind of a stretch, but it's just an abstract application. I heard this on a podcast years ago. I think it was probably Planet Money or something like that. And they talked about a paper that was done that was studying folks' habits around saving money for the future. And what and again, this is like a correlation. It's not necessarily the cause of this, but they noticed that saving habits were better in certain areas, and that they think it's partly because of the language. So the paper said that every time English speakers talk about the future, they have to use future markers such as will or going to. But in other languages such as Mandarin, Japanese, and German, future markers are not obligatory. And the future is often talked about similar to the way the present is talked about. And, the meaning is understood from the context of what you're saying, that it's about the future, but there's not like definitive words to like say this is the future. And because the future is spoken about in more of a present context, the idea of saving feels like it benefits you today more so than we do with our language. It kind of just like boxes, it segregates the present from the future. And if you want instant gratification, it's harder to save because there's a harder linguistic line between the two, which is abstract, but it's like super interesting to think about that implication of something as simple as, or maybe not as simple as language and the way we conjugate like, verbs and stuff like that.
So what came to my mind is the word sacrifice. What comes to word when you hear the word sacrifice?
Losing something or like giving something up, whatever, right?
Right, but it's like it doesn't have a feel good connotation to it.
True, it should.
Right, because it's like maybe. I don't know, because I feel like sacrifice. I feel like sometimes we like, even like, again, it has like these negative connotations, but it might be something necessary to get what we want. Now, if I said $1 million, we're gonna be like, hey, that's what's up.
Right.
It doesn't mean you're not gonna get it. It's just like now if I'm like, I'll give you $1 million, but you may have to wait.
Right.
But you're like, hey, this $1 million is coming.
Right.
But if I'm like, you gotta like, if you want this $1 million, you gotta give up Chick-fil-A. You gonna be like, Chick-fil who? What? Like, you know what I'm saying? And so like rewiring our mind to like look at different things in different words and the connotations like to it, right? 'Cause even going back to like the Lao Tzu, right? The words become our actions.
Right.
And sometimes like certain words is like we clench up, like sacrifice, discipline, okay, the word that again most people process, like everyone, a lot of people don't like the word process because we want instant gratification. And I've been guilty too, where I'm like, oh Lord, this is the process. And it's like, how long? Like, what we gotta do? Like, how do I like go through this?
How do we get there?
Yeah, rather than like, yes, you have to go through this process, but like, why not speak kindly to yourself or speak kindly and remind yourself that it's temporary.
Yeah.
It will pass. Like, there's a desired end coming, like, once you finish the process. And I think, and I've seen, like, people talk about this, like, as parents, right? Where it's like, your kid, like, hey, I want a cake. Let's make a cake. And it's like, yes, like, the end is great. You want the cake, but they get very antsy in the making of the process. Yeah. And it's like, no, you can't eat all the batter because then you're going to have the baked cake. And I think sometimes it's just like reminding people where it's like, you're going to have the cake, but you can't eat all the batter and you can't skip steps either.
That's true. That's true. And the hardest part about making a cake is when you take it out of the oven and it's got to cool down first.
Yes.
I just want to dig in right away.
And it's like, right. And it's like, but you don't want to burn yourself.
Nope.
And so, like, that's key. That was a gem drop. Like, because you have to wait. Yes.
You do have to wait.
That's true. Okay.
So I like how did you have any other words that you thought that you have that come to mind that like trigger a strong reaction? You mentioned discipline, sacrifice, process,
patience. Like just what you're talking about,
too.
Patience.
Yeah.
Because I feel like, and even like, okay, I was listening to someone talk about, like there's a scripture, right? The one where it's like, hope deferred makes the heart sick. And so like we get in like this thing where it's like, okay, I've been waiting. And then like we start to feel hopeless and we start to feel like it's never going to come. Mm-hmm. And I think it's like sometimes people don't fortify themselves in the wait.
Right.
Right. Where it's like, I want this now, but it's like, how are you waiting in the wait?
Yeah. That one thing that's helped me, my buddy, Kenny, we used to do our own little church service, which is a little abstract. Mm-hmm. But we would do this. And one of the things he would say, is he would give thanks for what we have and give thanks for what we don't have.
Yeah.
And if you're able to give thanks genuinely for what you do and do not have, it settles you in the waiting. If there is something still that you want to have, finding appreciation for the period of time where you don't have it is magical. It's grounding, it's settling. And it's not to say that you got to stop trying or stop, working, because obviously you got to pray with your feet, right?
Yeah.
But that's another African proverb, of course. But I just love that idea of gratitude for what we have and what we don't have. So that,
I heard someone recently say where it's like, be great, like be grateful for the problems that you don't have. Where it's like again, like where it's like, let's say like, okay, for example, like the whole car situation, right? We were talking about earlier, like, y'all, my car got stolen. It's okay. I'm well. But I was like, my car got stolen. Like, how am I get around? And my friends literally like, we got you. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, my biggest problem is I don't have a car right now. There are people who's like, yo, like, there was a flood. I don't have a house right now. Mm-hmm. I don't even have friends that be like, you can stay with me right now. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, when you think about it, where it's like, this is the biggest problem that I have right now. And this too shall pass. It will be okay. And it's like giving thanks where it's like, I have friends who hit me up. It's like, girl, you need to go to the store. I got you. Girl, you need this. I got you. I'll community came through.
Yeah.
And so like, again, just being very grateful. I like that. Being grateful for the things you have and the things you don't have.
Right. That's real. So kind of in that spirit, when I was thinking about this episode, I thought of a number of different words that are just kind of in society, and we don't really either we just use them loosely, we don't even think about like the nature of them or otherwise. So one that comes to mind is, what does every house have? Where do you sleep in your house?
Like my bed? Like, oh, like the bedroom.
Which one is the biggest bedroom?
Technically the primary bedroom, but also known as the master, or yeah.
Most people would say the master bedroom, but that has origination in like slavery and the whole feudal concept, whatever. So we say master bedroom all the time without thinking about it, but we should say primary bedroom, which is what you did so eloquently, and thank you for that. I think you probably the one that said that to me. I don't even remember, but like just words like that, they're just in our lives. So another one is I'm gonna call it by what it technically is, and most people aren't gonna know what I'm talking about. An A shirt.
An A shirt.
You know what an A shirt is?
An A. Oh, you talking about? Can I? You say like the colloquial?
Yeah. What does everybody call it?
A wife beater.
A wife beater. Wife beater. We have a shirt in our culture that we refer to as a wife beater. What the hell is that?
Some cultures refer to them as bibs.
Bibs? That's better than a wife beater because it kind of looks like a bib, like the skin is kind of like the bib.
Yeah.
Part. That makes sense. I like bib. Bib is healthier than
wife beater.
Yo.
I agree.
Really?
That word has always given me kind of pause.
Ugh.
Where it's like, like here, like growing up, and like my aunt telling my brother, like, hey, like throw down your wife beaters. And it's just like, like so I can wash them. And so it's.
I've heard kids say the word like, oh, I'm wearing a wife beater. I'm like.
Because they don't know.
Right.
And it's been so, it's ingrained in American society.
Yeah. And it's just so, I shouldn't even utter a laugh because it's just, to me, it's just deplorable. Like how is that so baked into our culture that we don't even bat an eye when we say that? Like, I mean, I know you did, and I do too, but how many people just say it without even thinking? Because
again, like our culture, our American culture is one of violence.
Right, that's true.
And so we normalize, like, and again, like, for like the longest time, again, like we have to be domestic violence and domestic violence response wasn't a thing until the 70s.
Yeah, I think I looked that up. I think the first animal shelter was started in like the 1700s. I want to say really? 17 or 1800s, but there wasn't a woman's shelter until like the 60s or 70s. I want to say like California or
yes, it was in California.
Was it California?
California led the charge in like domestic violence response.
Yeah.
And like the world kind of followed. But again,
in the 60s, like my parents were 10.
But it was culture. Like, where it's like your man hit, like even like I think about like Ike and Tina, like, and what's love got to do with it, right?
Yeah.
Where like people are like, well, what did you do to him? But again,
right.
like, and like that scene, and it's not funny, but I've like that when he hit the other dancer, and it's like, you ain't got to hit me but once, and it's just like that was counterculture.
Yeah, there was. That's a good point. That's a very good point. So yeah, there's just so many like just jaw-dropping examples of language that we use. Another one is when we talk about the District of Columbia, Columbus, Ohio, blah, blah, blah. Like, that is all for Christopher Columbus.
And that man ain't discovered shit.
Right. And, like, not only did he not discover shit, he never even touched the continental United States.
Didn't.
So,
and
like, that just still boggles my mind. We talk about, like, reclaiming Columbus Day, calling it Indigenous Peoples Day, which is cool. But, like, can we get his name off of everything?
Everything.
Please?
Everything.
Everything. Like District of Douglas or something.
Okay.
Call it something. District of Tubman.
No, for real. DT. District of Tubman. Okay.
Let's flip it up. Come on. Like, yeah. So there's also another term, which I'm not going to say, like MFer.
Yeah.
Is another term that has origination in slavery. So I stopped saying that. I should double check that. I meant to do that before the show. Apologize. Google it.
But I read that somewhere. I did read that. Okay, cool. I did also read that somewhere.
Yeah, like I like at least the first written time. I mean, maybe it was used before that, but that was very much the period of enslavement was very. It was a, I mean, just like any other business with its property. Yeah. They were very calculated with its propagation, and so like they literally forced various kinds of procreation on us, and
Yeah.
that term was used as a result, like which
Yeah.
which is gut wrenching to think about. And so I stopped using that term. I try to say mother sucker instead.
Yeah. I do too. I don't, and that's always been a word. It's always like, it's been like nails on a chalkboard for me. I feel like I've used it recently to to describe recent events.
Yeah.
Like the culprit who pilfered my vehicle. And I think, did I call him that? Maybe I called him a lot of things.
Yeah.
But typically I try not to. I try to steer clear from using that word, just because it's again, knowing like the history and the context. I'm like, okay, so I'm just like nunchuckers. I like that one.
I like that. That's a good. I don't know if I can say it as cool as you did, but
Thank you.
Nunchuckers, yeah, that's a good one.
Like my inspiration was Samuel L. Jackson.
He perfected the use of that term.
He did, and I feel like
did.
like when everybody else say it, it's like nails on a chalkboard to
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
But when he say it, I ain't gonna lie, it does sound kind of cool. like if I'm being full transparency.
Yeah.
Like when every time Samuel L. Jackson just says it, like I'm waiting for him as like Nick Fury just to like say it one time.
Right.
Like I want him to say it like one time and I'll be good.
Yeah. So another word that I feel like is used a lot, and I talked about this a little bit in the episode with my sister, but the way like gay used to be used as like, oh, you would just say it casually, like
it's a pejorative.
Oh, that's dumb. Oh, that's this. Oh, that's that. Like as just like a general broad term for negative.
Yeah.
And that's thankfully changed in the time, and the R word is also not used as much anymore. Hopefully not ever.
Yeah.
But a word that is still used often is saying that's crazy.
Ooh.
Which is kind of like a like being a little insensitive to those with various mental health issues and stuff like that, because there were periods in time where any kind of mental health situation was just cast off as crazy, like asylum and all kinds of like horrible treatment historically in that context too. So one thing I'm trying to say is, instead of that's crazy, say that's wild. And I know I'm not perfect with it. There's probably clips of me on this show saying that's crazy, and that's because I'm human and I'm gonna make mistakes. But I try to say that's wild instead, but I don't know.
One thing I'm struggling with is the word that was used in a Beyonce and Lizzo song. Do you know which word I'm talking about?
No.
Okay. It starts with the S and ends with jazz. Spaz.
Oh yeah.
Right? And so like, because again, like I feel like, and again, like, this is something I struggle with. It means I feel like, because like it means in the community with people with disabilities is very hurtful.
Yeah.
But growing up in the Black community, where it's like it meant like, oh, I'm about to like go wild like in these dances,
like,
or like it can mean I'm about to like go off, like I'm about to go like, and so it's just like, okay. And like I really kind of had to wrestle where it's like culturally this meant one thing to me, but I feel like especially like in my job, where like I my job is justice, my job is equity.
Yeah.
I don't use it in that space, and I don't find myself using it often.
Yeah.
And I try not to use it at all. But I'm not gonna lie, like I did feel a little something where it's like, again, like I don't want to be offensive, but I grew up and culturally like it, like like having to reconcile with that, because I think that's a real thing.
So we were just talking about the Kendrick song.
Yes. Right.
So, you want to intro
yeah,
that part? Yeah, go ahead.
So we had a really good conversation before we started the podcast, and we were talking about Auntie Diaries by Kendrick, where he uses the F word, I think like 10 times.
The F-A word?
Right.
You had to say that for me because I was like, F word. But, yeah, F-A word, yes.
But he's using it he's using this word multiple times, and we were having a conversation. It's like I don't even know how to describe our conversation, because it was just like so in depth, and like we were talking about like, was this appropriate, and we were like, no, because I was like looking at him like, well, what about because he's telling a story, but still like there were other ways, and the fact that he was scrutinized for using this word in that song, even though he was telling a story. And like one of the things we talked about was it detracts from the message of homophobia and transphobia in the Black community.
Yeah.
So that was a really cool conversation.
And for those who aren't aware of the song, it's the song is about his family members, but specifically his aunt, who's now a man. He's like, Monty's a man now. He says that multiple times.
And his cousin too.
And his cousin too. His cousin as well. Yeah. And so he talks about like how they were received by family, how they were received by the church, and it's, you can tell that the intent is to move the needle.
Yeah.
Against homophobia and these things, transphobia, etc. But the use of that word, like he like, because you said the word that Beyonce and Lizzo used,
right? And I just
like,
had to, because I felt like I wasn't sure if you were getting it. So
I wasn't getting it.
That's why I'm like, I'm just saying it.
I'm slow with the lyrics, so when you said it, I was like, oh, and then I could picture where it was in the song. So like I was slow, but yes, thank you. Mm-hmm. But that word, how that word has like, I don't know if nostalgia is the right word, but like it takes you back to a time when that was the meaning of the word was different, and it was not that it was okay, but like it conjures a certain feeling that is not meant to be hurtful,
right?
But it just conjures a certain moment in your coming of age that is just kind of like, you could look at that phase fondly, and like I think with the FA word and using gay in that way and the R word, those, I think in that genre that Kendrick was talking about, and I'm sorry, in that era Kendrick was talking about, all three of those words were probably used way more prolifically than they are now, negatively. And I don't know, like he said, I didn't know no better.
Yeah.
Like, you do now.
And so, okay, so you're saying like, because you do now,
don't say it.
Don't say it.
And maybe if you said it once, just for the folks who need to be slapped upside the head with it, so that they know that they've said this before, and they like, because when he said, because in one time, a couple times in the song said F-bomb.
Yeah,
and I
he
feel
said
like
it one thing. He was like, and like at the end where he's like talking about the conclusion part, like, me and my cousin were having like this reconciliation moment, and he was like, yo, like, I said the F word. I didn't know any better. Like it's just like it was harmless. And then like the cousin rebuttals and says like, okay, fine, like we can say it together. And he said we can say it together if you could let a white girl say nigga.
Right.
And so
right.
I guess, like, yeah. Well, no, go ahead.
Well, because so he made that point, but here he is in the song saying it like what 9-10 times.
Yeah.
So it's like, all right, so have a white girl on your track saying nigga. Do it, because you just did that. You are out of the group using that word. So you open the door. Thank you, Kendrick. Like, seriously.
And I get what you're saying. Because like we all know, like if there was a white woman that said like N-word, we would like jump down her throat. Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so
Kendrick being out of group, like, and I had the same struggle with Dave Chappelle too. Like, I like Dave Chappelle for many things that he's done, but where he went with the trans stuff is just like uncomfortably too far. And like, if you're out of group, like, just either just back off and don't talk about it, or just make sure, be very intentional and educate yourself so that you are not causing more harm than causing harm when you mean to be causing laughter or whatever. And comedy is a
it's gray.
It's very gray space for sure. And I didn't mean to open that can of worms again. But with Kendrick in this song, like, the song is intended, and I think in most, well, I'm not in the community, so I don't know, but I can see that he's trying to have a positive impact.
Right.
If he did not use that word, I'm curious if that impact would be felt. I for sure think it would have been felt more. I'm curious if without that word, folks in that community would feel that way. But we'll never know, because he dropped that word way too many times.
I have a question, and we kind of talked about this too. And and I just thought about this. I'm like, what if his intention, like, it is to like raise? Okay, how do I say this? What if his intention wasn't necessarily for people in the trans community, people in the LGBT community, but to raise awareness to like hood niggas in the hood, to like get, like, you know what I'm saying, where it's like trying to be like this bridge. And so like he's talking to them in a way that they understand. Like, and I don't want to excuse him for saying it, but I guess I'm trying to, like, I
get that.
Like, you get what I'm saying, where it's like it's the what's like the familiarity.
Yeah, me, because like
I'm meeting you where you are.
Right, because like I used to say blah blah blah. Here's the word blah, but and so there's validity in that. Mm-hmm. However, and I'm not saying, however, as like a rebuttal, but in addition,
Okay.
hip hop is an art form of innuendo. Like,
But it's also an art form of blatant truth, like, or not blatant truth, but like being in your face.
true, but that is okay. That's true, but we pick our moments when we do which, right? So like Bamas will never say the name of somebody they know that killed somebody.
Okay.
Because they know better.
Right.
That's against the street code. You would never do that.
But
like,
okay.
And like we like they drop all kinds of like triple entendres, double entendres to see if Bama's catch it. It's like, okay, cool. But like why did you have to say this word this many times? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like in the art form of innuendo, in the art form of like
but
saying things without saying things.
Have we used innuendo when talking about social issues? Because NWA's Fuck the Police, there was no innuendo.
True, but right, that's true. But that was also
because aren't okay, if we take both songs, are they not addressing a social issue in their own right? Right, like
no, they were in group in that one.
Oh, okay, good point.
So
okay.
he's telling Kendra's telling a story that isn't his.
Ooh, okay, that's good.
Right?
Okay.
That's why we've been having this conversation, because.
But is he telling? Okay, I think he's telling the story and how he fits in the story.
Fair, and that so yeah, and like, and even him saying like my auntie's a man now, like, and he interchangeably used she and he pronouns, and that could be seen as problematic too, because he's misgendering him, but in order to tell the story, you have to acknowledge that this person who you grew up with as a kid was an aunt, and now is a man. Now, like, that's part of the story, which is fair, right? And that can be stated hopefully without offense. But and so I guess so to your point, yes, there is power in telling the story from his perspective, because he's the person out of the community who. And really, he said he always did love these people in his family. Right. That never questioned. But his ability to be close and understand them has grown, and he mentioned that in the song, which is good. So he does have the right to tell his story in proximity. But it's different than Fuck the Police though, because that's definitely like that being that blatant. Like, that's in group. Like, they've been through that shit. So the Fuck the Police is coming directly from their experience.
Yeah.
But like him using that word that much, it's like, bro, like, you ain't had to say it that many times. Like, maybe if you said it once when we was kids, we said boom because we didn't know no better, and have that be the last time you say it, and then like let the song mature and grow the way you're talking about the maturation and growth that you went through throughout life, and let that be symbolic, so people can get it when you say it the first time, but like then say F-bomb the rest of the time. That way everybody knows what you're talking about. Yeah. Maybe that would have more impact. I don't know. And
I love this conversation.
I do too. And I was going to say it's semantics, but it's not. And that's the whole point of this episode.
About words.
That words hurt, words matter, right?
Because there were people, and again, like on Twitter, like I didn't interject. Like I just like I watched the conversation play out, and I would see people within, like, in group in that community. Some people were like, I get what he's saying. As someone in this community, I'm not offended. I would see someone who's like, I'm in group, I'm in this community, I see what he's trying to do, I'm offended.
Right. Yep. And everybody's entitled to their own reception of it.
Right.
And I think if he wanted to have the most impact, if he got rid of the word, it would have more impact, less controversy, and it would just set it up even better to have that conversation. And I'm not sure, to your point, would it have less credibility in the streets and in like just colloquial life without that word? I don't know. And that's a fair question. But with that platform, and now that he knows better, I feel like it's his responsibility to not use that word at all. And if anything, just use it the one time when you're saying I was a kid, I said it here. And then just leave it there.
Okay.
I don't know. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I love this conversation. And that's why I brought it to you, because like this is again something I've been like wrestling with, because I'm looking at this from multiple views and multiple like multiple like points of entry, I guess.
Yeah.
Like from an artistic perspective, like in like, you know, someone who does equity and justice work. And so yeah, I'm glad we had this conversation.
Yeah, that's a great. I appreciate you asking. I really appreciate you asking. That was a very, very good question. So I think one of the other things we wanted to talk about in this episode was just the contemporary, and we kind of already did it with that song, but the contemporary ramifications of the power of words. And I think there's a micro version of this in the sense that each of us has dealt with relationships and relationships with other people, relationships with ourselves, relationships with the United States government and the world and religions and all these kinds of things. And words are the method of transfer for all of those things. So any traumas we're dealing with, any our own self-image, all of those things are defined with words. And whether if you're in therapy, it's most likely talk therapy, like you using words to convey your feelings and thoughts, or open yourself up to feelings and thoughts. And so that's a very hot topic now. But then also there's like the macro view of it, where one of the things we had listed was like the overuse and devaluation of particular words that have sprung up out of certain communities, and also the rights of naming too. So like those are all things we talked about. Yeah.
So even if we jump into like the so the co-opting of culture, right? Like the pop culture, like the slang you hear, you can't tell me like that's not black people,
right?
Black like black and queer people, right? Like people like for example like per or
period, like everything,
right? Like that came like black women, black queer folks, even just certain even like I feel like even nonverbal things like with like black men, right? Like I'm not a black man, but like if I was out with my mans and a white man tried to like dap him up, I would feel some type of way.
Yeah.
Like don't know.
Yeah.
It's like the Barack Obama, like the anger interpreter.
Yeah. The Key and Peele joint.
Right. You shake his hand. You only save that for the bros. And like one of my biggest pet peeves. Oh Lord, it cooks my grits. Like I be wanting to fight. Like when white women try to like sis me.
Oh.
And I'm just like, ma'am, let's not go there.
Yeah.
Let's not go there.
Yeah.
Like, and even we can talk about the evolution of Karen.
Oh,
right?
That's a good point. Yeah.
Because
speak on it.
Before, like in like our I would say like our grandparents' age, like Karen was Miss Ann, right? Mm-hmm. And then like again, Karen was just something we said colloquially. And like I remember like in like I think it was the UK, there was a movement of white women basically who were just like, Karen is a racial slur. Another example, right?
I'm sorry.
It was a dead ass. If I can find the flyer, I'll send it to you. But they were trying like, this is a racial slur. And I'm like, Karen, be quiet. But even in the work that I do, equity and justice, there was an incident, right? Mind you, I'm a department. It's three of us now. But when we were like starting, it was me and my supervisor. And it was my job to come up with the social justice, racial justice glossary. And my supervisor, we went through it and she was like, we cannot put the word colonizer in because people will think it's a slur. I said, it's colonizer. What? I said, it's colonizer, not cracker. And she was just like,
You said that? High five.
Like we were talking about it and like she was cracking up.
Cracking up.
Ha! That was a good one.
Don't encourage my dad jokes. Don't encourage them.
Listen, I like dad jokes too.
All right.
But I'm like, and she was like, the reason she's like, I see you, I'm with it, but she's like, people are already judging us as soon as we get through the door, and because Black Panther is so popular, and that scene where Shuri's like, don't sneak up on me, colonizer. Oh she was like, they're going to pick, like, they're nitpicky, and they're gonna look at this, and they're gonna discredit us. She's like, you can't do colonizer, but we can do colonization.
So, this is sad. I mean, we've had to endure terrible, deplorable name calling for centuries in this colonizer country. And the moment we say anything that's anywhere remotely close to what we've experienced here in terms of shining a mirror back onto them, the sensitivity is through the roof. And it's like, by the way, you're still on top. Why are you crying?
But it's white fragility, right? Yeah. Where it's like we have had centuries of suffering, at the expense of our own comfortability. To max like we have to be uncomfortable so they can be comfortable.
Right.
And so like
and you are living, like your organization is living in real time, trying to navigate that.
And again, and a lot of and you'll see like a lot of social justice organizations, the one with the big funds, they have a resident white person, right? And
to kind of like do the policing,
like not just the policing, but it's kind of like I'm your friendly white person to call you out on your shit. Because again, the studies have shown white people can respond better to, or they feel more comfortable having conversations about race.
Yeah.
Excuse me, with someone who looks like them.
Yeah.
Now, again, you have two black women. From the gate, you're already like booty cheeks are already clenched. Okay, like they're already just like, oh my gosh, what are these African American women gonna say to us?
Yeah.
Like they're gonna call me. We had one training. We went somewhere, and like we always say, like it's like a definition. We talk about anti-racist and being anti-racist, and we say anti-racist isn't who you are; it's what you do. And someone, like this black lady, she's like, "Well, if you're not anti-racist, what are you?" Like trying to make us be like, "I can't." I said, listen, we can't call nobody in here racist. Like we can't, know. Right. Like professionally, we can't be in here like y'all racist. Like we can't do that.
Yeah.
But we can walk you through how to be anti-racist, walk you through how to navigate and mitigate those prejudices and biases. Like now, if we off the clock and it's like 6:00 and we somewhere with like tacos and tequilas, I'm like, baby, like it's right. I think I don't know if I talked about it like on the last time I was here, where even at like at our agency where like we had to do like tabling, and I was like, and it was like in deep Chesapeake, and it's me and my supervisor, the only two women of color in this meeting, and I'm like, pause, deep Chesapeake. I'm like, is it safe? And white women are laughing. And my supervisor goes, bring a friend.
Wow.
And you know what I'm saying? So like these,
Wow.
But having to mitigate these things and factoring even vocabulary that is sensible to their palate, so to speak.
Yeah.
And like, so it's,
that's crazy. And I was about to say that's crazy. See, I caught myself. I caught myself. That's wild.
There you go.
Like, and just that amount of effort that we have to go through, that gets into the whole weathering thing too, right? Like,
yes.
that little micro effort to like say the right thing, do the right thing, that adds up.
Yeah.
That's funny how they laughed and they're like, of course.
Bring
a friend.
Bring a friend.
Bring a friend. For sure. No stop. But like that brings that kind of gets to the macro piece of it too. Like and I was trying to see if I could find a source for this, but like us as Black Americans, we haven't had the agency to define ourselves until recently, like maybe the last 100 years. Like, but even then, it's still been under the auspices of the white gaze, the white GAZE, the white power structure, and things like that. Like, obviously, when we were enslaved, we were called all kinds of nothing. The N-word and any other kind of form of property, like, and since then it was like boy, girl, like it was like Miss was only for Miss and Mister were only for like white people and blah blah blah. Like,
yeah. And I think that's even like with the way we name our children, right? Like,
that's true.
Because people be like, oh my gosh, that's so ghetto. And I'm like, why? Why is that ghetto?
Yeah, and the fact, but also we're thinking of what, their ability to get a job because their name is something other than John.
True, but even like I make it a mission now. Especially at my job, and even when I was in like the news studio, right? Like when I was to be a producer, whereas like we would like whenever we would call them pronouncers, right? So like when you're writing out the text, like I would get in my anchor's ear, and I'm like, I want you to practice it, like because it's like especially if it was like an African name, I'm like. Because my thing is, I'm like, if you can pronounce Dostoevsky or Timothée Chalamet,
yes,
you can say Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie.
Right? Please
put
say
some
her
respect
name
on her name,
right?
And like I tell people, like all like young people all the time, I said make them choke on every syllable,
right?
Okay,
right.
Like your name is not hard; they're lazy,
right?
Okay.
And it's not that they're lazy; they're racist. Because they're not lazy when it's like you said, when it's like Ovechkin or some like name with 17,000 consonants in it and 2 vowels.
Right.
Like they figure that shit out. Like,
dead ass. I'm like, no. And I make it a point, like even with my friends, like, cause like I have like friends who are like Nigerian or Ghanaian, like African friends, and like they like when you first meet them, they'll give you like their Americanized. I'm like, how do I say your name? Like I'll be like, if you, I'll call you your American name, like that's no problem. But I want to know, just like for future references, like how do I say your name fully?
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like I'm very like particular about that. Because like that's your name.
Yeah.
And like not to sound cliche, but like I like real heavy, I really believe like your name is the first prophecy over your life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like that's why like I love it. Like I know someone and like they are related to people and their name is Peace, Prosper, like names like that. And I know people like, oh, that's OD. I'm like, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because like you better speak those things over your children.
Right.
Even Nick Cannon and his 50,011 children. Like one thing about that man, he gonna have them kids, but he gonna give them a name that's like it's like a blessing, you know? Like I think one is like heiress or zillionaire. Like I mean, I know it's kind of silly,
Interesting.
but it's just like you're speaking wealth.
Is one of them named Virtue?
Huh?
Virtuous?
I think one is named Virtuous. Or something like that. Are you being funny?
I was being funny.
But I think there is one where it's like something that's like
Monogamy? No.
he don't practice that. I doubt that's what he's gonna name his child. All them kids by all them women. That's a whole other story.
Back to the
Yes.
but what names is actually a really like a very crucial origin point for the power of words.
Yeah.
And that's true both on the macro and micro, like the names of individuals and us as people. And I mean, you look at like Latinx, look at like LGBTQIA plus, like what we, and BIPOC, like I don't like BIPOC, but like
That is that why you kind of like when I was like it's BIPOC mental health awareness and you were just like kind of like, oh, I didn't know you didn't like the term BIPOC.
Well, when you said BIPOC mental health awareness, where I went with that was like, you mean capitalism symptom month?
Ooh. Okay.
That's where I went. So,
Okay.
but like, oh, BIPOCs, make sure you go get your therapy. Like, also capitalism. Look at all the mental health crises you're creating.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's how I like. Now, obviously, that has like what you're saying has positive intention. Like everybody wants everybody to get mental health, but I look at our society as just like a petri dish for mental health conditions, because we are segregating people from communities, we're segregating people from their families, their loved ones, and we're not instilling values beyond just your what's capitalistically extractable from you.
True.
And so it's anyway, and I know mental health has like, there can be a nature and nurture component to it too. So I know there's some genetic stuff that can happen, which obviously should be addressed as well. But BIPOC though, as a term, like I see who comes up with this stuff. Like who came up with Latinx? Who came up with like BIPOC? I get that like people of color was annoying, and that's why BIPOC was kind of created to uniquely call out Black, Indigenous, people of color, blah blah blah, the way LGBTQIA does too. But like and so honestly, this ties into a future episode that I think we want to do, which is individual versus collective, because it's like all of these things are not the same.
Yeah.
And so when you say people of color, like that's a broad brush, and when you say Black, Indigenous, people of color, you're giving them each a letter. But when you say BIPOC, you're still saying people of color.
You're grouping them together.
Yeah, as if they're the same thing. And we know they're very, very different. And even like Black is not a monolith. Native Americans, how many thousands of nations were here before Pilgrims got here? Blah blah blah. Like, so all of this is just annoying. And who's naming who? Like the name we have for the Native folks in the Dakotas is Sioux, but Sioux is the name given to them by their a rival nation. Sioux means snake or something like that. And so they actually go by Lakota, but like we don't think of them. We think of them as Sioux. So like enemies naming enemies, like freaking there's a country in Africa called shrimp.
Really?
Cameroon.
You did tell me this.
Yeah. Cameroon is shrimp in French and Spanish.
I didn't know that.
Like we got whole countries, Ivory Coast. Why, who calling the Ivory Coast? Is that us calling the Ivory Coast? Cool. If not, why?
Right.
Gold Coast. Do we call it Gold Coast? Or is that because people came here looking for gold? You know what I'm saying? Like, these names are so important, and who has agency in naming who and us and we. Like, that's why I think it's beautiful, like you said, like us taking agency and naming our children things that are meaningful, beautiful. And we have always taken that seriously because that's one of the few things we did control.
Yes.
And when we look at the broad scheme of things, like, how can we regain control of ourselves as a collective, as a community, and begin to name those things and name what's right for us in terms of how those communities should even function.
Yeah. I love that.
All right, I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, but you was dropping gems, friend. I was like, okay. I hear just boom. That was a mic drop.
Ay.
That was all fire.
I didn't even mean to go all that. I didn't even mean to.
I hope you keep that in like the pod because like that was necessary.
I appreciate it.
And it ties into what you were saying, right? About agency and reclaiming and naming things. Like I love that.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm like, and when you said that, I just had a thought. I'm like, I thought about how like back in like the 90s, like 80s and 90s, when people were like think about Asada Shakur, where she's like, don't call me like Joanna Chesimard. That's not my name. That's my slave name. Like my name is Asada. You know?
Yeah.
And I'm like, should we rename ourselves?
You know,
like our own personal names. Like when we get of age, what if it's like, yo, like I want to rename myself?
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fine. I honestly think that's reasonable. My family with my last name, like we've done a little bit of digging, and we can go back to my great grandparents that had the same last name, but on my paternal side, but we don't know anything about where they were born or what. So it's definitely it's so I'm not sure, and there's definitely Pilgrim white folks named have the same last name, Carson, and so it's like, how is there a link there?
Okay.
Is reparations necessary? I mean, yes, they are, but
I was like, always.
They are for sure. But do we have specific family ties here? But no, but should we rename ourselves? I think if we're inspired to, I think we should. I know in when I was in Ghana, like Kweku is named for if you're born on a Wednesday. So you know how like in many of the cultures in different languages, they have like a name for part of your name is the day you were born. So there's just like that whole piece.
I didn't know that.
So yeah, I don't know. Like I think we should do. I think grown folks should make grown folk decisions. But no, seriously, like if it speaks to your soul, and honestly, not even grown folks. Like if you are 18, 19 years old and you're discovering your gender identity, you're discovering like your identity all fully all the way through. Like, and if your name doesn't sit well with you, name yourself something different.
Yeah,
like I endorse that.
I know I was looking at this TikTok, and they were talking about like when you adopt a child, like if they're older, like if they're a little bit older, or you can they can choose to rename themselves, like not just like the last name either.
Right, first name too.
Right,
Yeah.
I'm like, I love that for them.
That's real. That's real.
That's very real.
Yeah, so I feel like words are clearly very important. I mean, obviously with podcasts, with I mean, so much is out here about what people are saying.
Yeah.
Like half the time, anything we're joking about, laughing about, or discussing is about somebody's words. Like with Chica and her like
yes,
getting in trouble on the internet. But that should legit be a segment. Like who got in trouble on the internet today?
That should.
Because like people with their words in their mouths are just causing trouble. But it's because words do matter. And another thing that's important to think through when we talk about words is also the art of an apology. I think a lot of times, like we talk about, people doing dumb stuff, whether with intent or not, and getting called out on it, like, and half the times you see like organizations, if they did something racist, like, we are sorry if we offended you, and it's like, that don't mean like, so the art of a good apology, like, that's nothing more than just words well crafted to convey true regret, remorse, solidarity, and with an attempt to repair any harm. You know what I mean? And so that's just another example of how words are important.
I agree. And I think there's a couple ways to apologize, right? Because the intentionality of it, right? Like I saw something, I was watching something. These kids got into a fight. One kid was bullying the other. The other like broke his nose, and he's like, "I apologize for breaking your nose, but I don't apologize for standing up for myself." And I think I respect it.
Yeah.
I respect it.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, and again, in situations like that, there's kind of a mutual accountability and respect, right? Yeah, and that apology is real, but it's also, but standing up for yourself is also justifiable, right? That's a righteous thing to
Right.
defend your personhood, your space,
Yeah.
and your energy. I want to go back to what you said earlier, because you mentioned how what we absorb is we have agency in that. When words are spoken, we have the ability to deflect it like water off a duck's back, or we can let it in. And I think that's the challenge that young people face, that children face, because they are sponges. They haven't quite built up that fence to shield certain things. So that's why bullying can be so traumatizing, and why parental relationships, if they're not healthy, can also be just as traumatizing if there's not a safe space, an emotionally safe space, with compassion and love to give kids a foundation from which to build that security and sense of self, to then shield off words of inaffirmation or whatever, right? So then they know that those affirmations, they know those validations that they can say to themselves, because they've gotten it from a tribe, from a community for long enough for them to maintain it in life.
Yeah. And one thing I love now, like I love affirmations. Like there was a point in time I used to get really emotional when I would see like videos of like parents doing affirmations with their kids, because I just thought it was just so beautiful, especially little black girls, little black kids, period. Like, because it's just like it's a thing now, but I don't think that was always a thing like coming up. And so it's just like, just to see, it's like kids are being watered and like poured into in that aspect. And one thing that I'm really big on now, especially with like little black girls, not just telling them that they're beautiful, but it's like, you are so inquisitive, you are so daring, you are so brave, like telling girls like, you are more than just beautiful, but you are beautiful, right? Quick little story time. My best friend, she's a dark-skinned black girl. She's a dark-skinned little sister, but she's like, the little sister is like the darkest person in the house. And so like, like when you grow up with like light-skinned people, where sometimes it's like, hey, like, don't be out in the sun too long, you don't want to get dark, and what that does,
and what that
and not just, again, like, 'cause I grew up like that, like, and I remember I had an incident when I was like a child, and I grew up around my aunts, and my aunts were like in their 60s, and they used to be like, oh, I gotta get out the sun, I don't want to be too dark.
Right.
And I remember I was like a kid, I said it, and my grandfather was in the car, and it just like, I never realized it hurt his feelings so much until my grandma pulled me aside, and we had a conversation about the shades of black beauty.
Wow.
And even my grandmother, right, on my mom's side, who was like the darkest out of her household, and what that meant, and how she didn't always get affirmations, like, so it's just so important to pour into kids with those affirmations, and to let them know that they're valuable and that they're worthy, and to really build them up. Because I think as kids, I feel like for a long time throughout their childhood is really kind of spent developing a self of identity, and it's like you get a mold kind of, and then when you like leave the nest, whether it be college or whatever you do, like that mold might chip, and you have to discover yourself all over again and really define who you are outside of the realm of community, outside of all these things.
Right.
So it's like a continuous growing process, but to have people affirm your being, not just what you do, but who you
are, just like just the righteous existence.
Yes.
The right to exist.
Yes.
And to have that be instilled in those young years, so that which is why, like, it's funny. I mean, something the Lord made that movie about Vivian Thomas. I read a portion of his autobiography for a paper in college, and he gave a lot of credit to his then segregated schools, And he gave credit to them because we didn't have much material, but we had black teachers who gave a crap.
Yes.
and instilled in us like the validity in ourselves and which was lost in integration.
Yes.
Right. And so I think I don't like, I'm not opposed to segregated or not. I don't know. Segregated has a negative connotation because it was done to us by a downpresser. Right. But another one is overstand instead of understand.
I like that.
I knew there was another one was going to come to me. But yeah, like because instead of when you are aware of something, you are on top of it now. You're not under it. You're overstanding. Anyway, so
I like that. I overstand.
Overstand, right? So, where was I?
You were talking about how like so you're talking about segregation, how like it wasn't done to. It was done to us.
It was in down pressure. So like and see, you'll get me going again. Like, so segregation has it has a bad taste in our mouths because it was down pressure. But if we were to choose our own way of living, we might choose to be around ourselves, black people. And when General Sherman asked a congregation of black leaders what they wanted after enslavement was ended after the Civil War, they said we wanted land and we wanted a community, and they asked them, they were like, where do you want your community to be? And we were like, they were like, we reckon white folk don't want to be near us since we just got free, so we should probably be alone, bro, to be amongst ourselves. And you know what I'm saying, because they were aware not only of their own preference to be just with themselves, but also like, I don't think we should be mixing with them right now because they're probably hot right now. So like, if we were able to kind of control our own communities and control our own naming and our own like all of that stuff, like just the value that comes from that, and the fortitude that's instilled within the kids, which was the original point of me saying this, like then they can go forth and go ahead. Yeah, you can go out there and you know what to do when some white lady try to touch your hair. Like you've been baking in this for about 12, 13, 14 years. Like you go forth.
Yes.
you know how to handle them. You know what I mean?
Like I love that. And it's like the giving kids the confidence where it's like handle your handle, but I'll back you up.
Right.
Like I'll be in the wings. Mm-hmm. But listen, if something happened, call me. Right. I'll be up at the school. 0.5. Okay. Facts.
So yeah, I feel like we could go on and on about this topic. I think this is a really beautiful one in terms of just words being powerful and having words can be life-giving, and they can also hurt and damage. So I guess my takeaway from this is to try to be conscious and aware and intentional with the words I use and the energy that it's expressing and disseminating. And if I have negative emotions, negative things to say, to try to be careful with whom and where I share them.
Yes.
You're not going to see me on the inner space bad mouthing somebody kids in first class.
Okay.
First of all, I'm not in first class, but anyway. So yeah, that's what I'm taking away from this one. How about you?
I'm taking away just the importance, just how important words are. Mm-hmm. And so I feel like for our closing thoughts, like one question I wanna ask you. I think we talked about how words do hurt. Mm-hmm. But I also want to talk I want to end with how words can edify. And so last question, at least for me, what is something that someone said to you that poured into you and made a positive difference? What's one of the best things or the best compliments someone has ever given you?
So I'll actually open the hood to the car a little bit and say that when we talk about, and I thought about this earlier in the recording, when we talk about the love languages, mm-hmm. words of affirmation is one of them.
Yeah.
Right. And to be frank, I'm not sure what my default receiving love language is, which sounds terrible to be a 30-year-old person and still learning myself in that way. I know my giving love language is acts of service. That's just core to me. That's just natural. But for a while I thought words of affirmation was big for me, and mm-hmm. but was also sick and twisted about myself is that I reject them. If anybody gives me a compliment, I'm like, nah, whatever, blah, blah, blah. No. You got the wrong one kind of thing. So that question's a good one because it's one that I need to practice answering and receiving affirmative words and validating words and compliments and just like pushes and positivity. I need to get better at that anyway. So I think one of the most meaningful things that I've heard, and this is one recently in life, there's probably plenty as a child that I could think of, but this one's just a little bit more top of mind because it's more recent, was just that I'm deserving of love.
Yes.
As somebody who's been divorced, as somebody who's just, and even like men in general.
Yeah, I think men need to hear that.
Capitalistic patriarchy, you know what I'm saying? It's work. And, the way we receive love is sometimes overlooked. Sometimes it's just, have sex with them. It's like, nah, it's not that simple. Like we are just as emotional and complicated as women are, as everybody is. And just knowing that I deserve love and challenging myself to allow myself to be open to receiving that love. So many parts of my life are just like doing all or many of the adult things. And I take pride in that, but I shouldn't do that to a fault. Like if I find a partner that is a good fit, like run with that. And I don't think I'm afraid of relationships. I don't think I'm like anti-relationship. Well, I'm definitely not. But just being open to being loved, just being like, just being like open to being loved, but what was said was that I deserve to be loved. I deserve that, and I've heard it multiple times. But sometimes it takes, at least for me, I'm stubborn. It takes a lot of times for something to be said for it to really sink in and germinate.
Marinate.
Exactly, marinate. It's beautiful. So yeah, so that's for me. How about for you?
Okay, one thing you said, right, and I'm going to answer the question. When you were talking about like how it's like you're worthy of love, I think sometimes as men, like people think, or like there's like this assumption like you're only worthy of love based off what you do.
Ooh, that's true.
And not who you are.
So if you didn't have a good job, if you weren't able to provide in these ways, like
it's like you ain't shit.
Yeah, because some women have like, oh, if he's not making a certain amount of money, like, oh, so does that mean he's not worthy of love and affection, companionship, just because he's in a different spot? But go ahead.
Like, aren't we all human? Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
So for me, the best thing, I'm trying to think, the best compliment or the thing that kind of like, I think it was like a very similar thing. I had a conversation with my sister one time, and like I was like kind of going through some things, and she said to me, she's like, "This isn't you," and then she proceeded to remind me who I was, and she said, "You are a light. You are a force. You are a woman." And again, like I used to be, and I'm becoming her again, but like I used to walk into spaces and like I would introduce myself as like, I'm going to be a New York Times bestseller. Like my name is so-and-so. I'm a New York Times bestseller. My book just isn't published yet.
Nice. I like that.
And like, and so she had to remind me of that. And she was like, you're worthy and you are deserving. And I was just like, I am. And it's like, again, like even I wrote that on, my thingy-majiggy, and to like sum it up in what she said, she was like, you've been the flame, you didn't even need a lighter. She paraphrased by Rico Nasty, but right. Or from Rico Nasty, but yeah, and so like big kudos to her on that.
That's beautiful, having that family, having that that tribe to
like remind you,
exactly. I've been
it's key. And I think you need those words sometimes. You need people to remind you and to speak life into you.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's beautiful. I appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
So for the song I'm rocking to.
What you rocking to?
I don't want to speak for you, but I know you heard this album too. But LaNell Grant's
It's fire.
Album.
Like, listen, LaNell did her thing, okay? Like producer, rapper, LaNell. All the flowers.
Yeah, she crushed that. All the flowers. And I think it's perfect that to put her on this episode because my energy, like I always knew she was affiliated with Toby and Wingway and Fat and everything. She producing for them, and she rapped a couple times. Like, and I saw them perform back at the Fillmore like almost 2 years ago now. So I've seen them on stage. Like that's a great show. But I love seeing her come out of her shell and into her own, And what caught me and what drove me to like fandemonium in anticipation for this album was her word of the day.
Yes.
Yo.
Bruh, you put me onto that.
I did?
Because you posted it. And I'm like, is that Nell?
Yeah.
I be talking like I know them. I don't know them. But I was like, LaNell? Is that you? And I was just like, oh, sis got bars.
She has bars. She would pick a word. For those who don't know, on Instagram, she would have a word of the day. It would be like hyperbole or some like SAT word. And she would just like rhyme. She would define the word. She would use the word. She would wordplay with the word. Like she would just go in on the word. And some of that made the album. But like I was just like, yo. Like these are bars, and so that got me like really anxious for the album, and I love the album. Do you have a favorite song on it?
I can't choose. I'm still like I like to listen a couple times and then like pick my favorite. I don't have a favorite just yet, but I think the one that's coming to mind, I think it's like track 3. Hold on, what track is it? And the album is called I Ain't Gonna Hold You.
Yeah, she held us for a long time,
yes. Though. Answer by Fire. That's what it was.
Oh, that was a good one. That song, that was my favorite until I heard Collect Call.
And again, it could change. Like I need to listen to it a couple more times.
Yeah.
It could change. But at this very moment, yeah.
Yeah, Answer by Fire was fire. And I love how she's like unapologetically like speaking about her faith, Christianity, like her, you know what I'm saying, her God answered by fire. That's that joint. Like, so yeah, I thought we might both be rocking to her.
Okay.
so that was a good guess. Okay.
Yeah.
So LaNell Grant, check out that album. I Ain't Gonna Hold You. It took a while for it to come out to all the streamospheres, but it's definitely out everywhere now. And yeah, big shout outs to her. She crushing it with that joint. All right, y'all. Well, thank you for listening to the podcast. Thanks again to Cierra for joining me yet again.
Okay.
And yeah, so as always, you can get at me on Instagram at RealDadult. That's RealDadult.
And y'all can find me on the socials on Instagram at Cierra Charisma, and that's CIERRA CARISMA.
All right. So as always, you can let us know what you thought about this episode or any prior episodes. Let us know if you have any ideas for any future episodes. We hope to catch you here next time. Until then, be safe, be well, peace.
Bye, y'all.
Who Knows It's Just Life podcast is recorded, produced, and edited by me. All thoughts and views expressed on the show represent that moment in time. Participants have the right to be wrong, learn, and reshape their ideas as the journey through life continues. Please remember to like this episode. If you haven't already, subscribe to the show on YouTube, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, thank you for listening.